Joining us is Dave Freed, who is running for Attorney General on the Republican side in Pennsylvania. Dave, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk first about the Kathleen Kane ad and the argument of critics that that's not accurate. And I think, Dave, they even called outrageous to bring that blonde girl walking along, and then you see a rapist pulling up in the car behind him. What do you say about the accuracy of the ad?
Well, it's not our ad, and that's not an answer I'm thrilled with, Tom, because I'm an elected district attorney. I'm chief law enforcement officer. I take responsibility. That's what I do. I stand up and lead. But this is an ad I had nothing to do with. I didn't sanction, and I'm disappointed with outside attacks if they're not factual. I mean, we got to be factual. That's what we do in this business. And saying they've done a pretty good job trying to effectively tie this ad to me in my campaign, but it's not mine. Just saying it doesn't make it true.
The difference I see in her own words between what I've seen you say and Kathleen Kane, in addition to experience that you can talk about, she seems to think that you are too much law and order, straightforward law and order. She seems these diversifying programs and all these other ameliorative effects versus the prosecutorial role, at least what I heard her say yesterday.
Well, that's interesting, and I don't know that I've heard that, Tom, but in this business, in this day and age, it's amazing how much time we as prosecutors spend trying to keep people out of jail.
Right.
And frankly, sentencing reform and alternative sentences has been one of the hallmarks of my career. Now, and I'm happy to talk about that for a lot of reasons. But one of the main reasons, though, Dom, is I think it gives me more credibility when I go into a judge and say, hey, listen, this guy needs to be locked up. Because I'm not going in and saying that in every case. We say it when it's appropriate. I talk about it a lot in terms of drug cases. We need to treat users and addicts like users and addicts, but we need to treat dealers like dealers and lock them up. So if the criticism is I'm too tough and too law and order, I'll take it.
What is the big bone of contention? What's the difference between you and Kane? Is it a question of resume, competency, length of doing it? What's your contention? What's your pushback against her?
It comes down to breadth of experience, leadership, and executive experience. We both have a similar set of experiences as an assistant DA. But when you go beyond that, for the last 11 years, I've been either the first assistant DA or the elected district attorney, making those tough decisions, my name on the bottom line, making those decisions whether to resolve a case, whether to file a charge, whether to file an aggravating circumstance in a death penalty case, but more importantly, stepping up and taking responsibility for everything that happens in the office. We win, it's mine. We lose, it's mine. That's the responsibility you have as chief law enforcement officer. And it's very difficult. I understand the transition, Dom. I did it from assistant to the head. And to go from an assistant to the chief law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth is quite a jump. I respect my opponent's experience as an assistant. It's similar to mine. But my experience goes beyond that. And I've been a leader in the Pennsylvania DA's Association. I've been a leader among my colleagues. And that's the argument that I'm out there making to voters.
Now, she's making the argument because of this ad going after Governor Corbett, who listeners know. We did the governor's show with him yesterday. Dave Freed was Attorney General for 2 terms. And her argument is move too slowly on Sandusky. In some cases, I guess those allegations go even further. There was political concern. I don't know that she said that exactly. What's your sense overall, what you can tell the voters in Pennsylvania about your judgment on the prosecution of Sandusky based upon, you weren't doing it, but based upon what we do know, what's your overall sense of what went on?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think you can have it both ways. I don't think you can be on national TV during the case and calling the prosecution a blockbuster and then come out during a political campaign and criticize how the case went. I mean, that's kind of, it's hard to be on both sides of that issue. But Dom, what I know is from the presentment that I read and followed the case like most people. I wasn't out there in the media commenting on it because I think as a sitting prosecutor and somebody who might be handling the case, I read my ethical obligations as preventing me from doing that. But I've said repeatedly, only the prosecutor handling a case knows the pace of that case and knows when the right time is to bring the charge. And we as prosecutors know that we're going to be criticized often no matter what we do. But the most important thing to remember is we get one shot. One. We don't get an appeal if we lose. And in a case similar to Sandusky, high-profile defendant, delayed report, lack of physical evidence, you better build a case based on corroboration or you're not going to have a chance.
Let's break that down, Dave Free. So that means, as the governor has told me, and I think I hear you saying in similar cases, he got 45 out of 48 of the charges. If you bring one kid forward, we know what the defense is going to do. They're going to say, look at this kid. He's messed up, drugs, he's doing it for money. But if you find 10 of them, they are going to capitulate, as they did in this case, and you're going to get your man or woman.
Don, the striking thing in the presentment, which was the document that came out of the grand jury, wasn't the graphic nature of it. I know to the public that was the striking thing because they don't normally read that. You know, I know what involuntary deviant sexual intercourse is. I deal with it every day. We did 16 of those cases in 2011 in the county where I'm DA. But the really striking thing to any prosecutor or law enforcement was the absolute corroboration among those victims who said virtually the same thing. Now, of course, you see how it went at the trial. They tried to build that in to the defense and say that they were coached. That's the way this business goes. But that corroboration is what you need to build. If you go in there with one kid making one allegation against a high-profile defendant, you're going to have a really, really tough time in court. I've seen that in my experience. So you have to build the case. And when to pull the trigger on charges, only the prosecutor building that case knows. Now, I've said you have to read all the reports, all the witness statements, talk to all the investigators, I think, before you can say it was done too quickly or it was not done quickly enough. It's too simple to make that conclusion after the case.
Yeah, and I think, Dave, I would say this, looking at it, and I only went to law school, not practicing, so you don't have to come and bust me. I didn't graduate. I got into this. But looking at it from what I know of that, and I did go 3 years, that, you know, it's a matter of art that we have to give space to each prosecutor here, and it's fair to ask the question. But to run down Broadway saying this was egregious on the part of Corbett, given the result, you can imagine as a prosecutor what it would be like if you rush in there and you don't have everything buttoned up and a monster like Sandusky walks. The pain and the hurt and the anger of the public would be unbelievable.
Tom, it's an absolutely fair question, no doubt about it. But remember this, and this is what I try to explain to the public every chance I get. Filing a charge is the easy thing to do as a prosecutor. Gaining probable cause, filing a charge, that's easy. But what a chief law enforcement officer does is recognize the awesome power that we hold in our hands and recognize that we have one opportunity to get a defendant. And that's what informs the decision. You make the decision when it's the right thing for the case. And sometimes you have to tell people it's not enough. The hard thing is to say to police officer or victim, we're not ready yet. It's not enough. But ultimately, the chief law enforcement officer, the person making that decision, has to be focused on the end game. And the end game here is 45 out of 48. Now, I know people are angry. Look, I've lived with this as a prosecutor. We arrest people, we lock them up, we put them away. They're cloaked with all these great constitutional rights we have, and people still want more. They're angry, and they should be, that a monster got away with doing what he did for so long. But as prosecutors, we have to understand that anger, but we have to do the job that we've sworn to do.
And Dave Freed, we're talking about Dave Freed, Republican candidate. We'll give your website, Dave, in a moment, for Attorney General in Pennsylvania. You know, people often say to me, and I try to respond, but you're in the catbird seat, both running and what you've done as a prosecutor. Well, why not have the police tail Sandusky? Why not have the police tell them they know? Why not do something like that? Talk about what that would do legally if you did anything like that.
Well, these are tough cases. Now, from the time, my estimation is from the time that the AG got involved, Sandusky knew that he was being looked at.
Okay.
So that takes away some of the things you can do, Dom. That takes away things like consensual phone calls. It takes away tailing, and it's not like it is on TV. So you have to build that case through whatever means you can. And when somebody knows they're under investigation, they're generally not going to do things that incriminate them further. So this case was built by going after victims. And remember, use of grand jury, we use grand jury because it's a process that helps us to get records, but we have to make a showing to a judge to get approval to use the investigative grand jury in the first place. And one of the main reasons you do that is you have uncooperative witnesses. They had to go find these people and give them the opportunity, and once they did, they cooperated. Contrast that with the case that we just charged in my county with 7 victims of a teacher in a Christian school who, as soon as we had one victim on board, 6 more came forward. And so that's the contrast. We were able to charge that case right away without using a grand jury because we didn't have to. But in Sandusky, it was necessary to build the case, in my estimation. Absolutely.
Dave Freed, what is your website where people can learn more about you and support you in the upcoming campaign?
www.davidfreed.com. davidfreed4ag.com.
Very good, David. Thank you for jumping on today. To be continued.
Hey, Don, thanks. And thanks for all that work you do in education, man. I'm a child of educators, and I think education is the answer.
Thank you, Dave Freed. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, Dave Freed, Republican candidate.